All right, Sunday drop it is. It is time for Sunday afternoon drop. I hope you got a chance to listen to yesterday's segment with Ed Kratz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles and SI.com, our official NFL contributor. Yes, that's right. We started talking NFL, the preseason in a couple weeks. All the teams will be into spring training. If we call it spring training, it's more like summer training. And then just right at the first part of August, preseason starts with the Panthers and the Cardinals. So it's football is coming back. Woohoo! And then tomorrow we'll be catching up with Adam Jividan. We'll be doing our World Cup soccer segment. Yes, the U.S. is out. They screwed the pooch, but we move forward. We see what's going to happen in the quarterfinals with the World Cup. My name is Tom Marquis. I'm the host of this ship for the next half hour or so. Joining us now is Steve Wilson, editor in chief of SpeedwayDigest.com and our official NASCAR contributor. How are you, sir? Happy Sunday to you.
Hey, we're going for you. It's finally getting trying to get back from all the things and being away
Get
for a while. So catching up.
get back to normal. Well, let's start things off, and then we'll do a recap of yesterday's race. I know it was kind of a late race. I myself also fell through it, fell asleep through it. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of takeaways from that race, and especially what's carried over to today's race at Echo Park in Atlanta. I still want to call it Atlanta Motor Speedway. But before we get to that, we've got a couple kids out on the track, and they are poking each other around, pounding their chest, seeing who is and who isn't. Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar are still at odds. Basically, Zane Smith called Carson Hocevar a coward, and they have a feud that's been going on for a while. And he called him a coward among other insults. I don't know if it's a situation where Carson Hocevar is winning races and he's an aggressive driver, or is this a situation that maybe is well warranted? So let's kind of take it by the numbers. We're going to dive into the Zane Smith and Carson Hocevar feud. Is he a coward or is he not a coward? Dun dun dun. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I don't. You look back to last week at Chicagoland, and the two of them got wrecked, and Zane Smith was not happy after that wreck, and yesterday. These are the only pair that have been called to the NASCAR Hall after
Mm,
issues over the last couple of weeks and multiple meetings in the hauler. Zane Smith yesterday after qualifying said, just flat out, I don't like him. And I just think that this feud really isn't over with, and getting called to the hauler has not really dampened this very much. And even in the other case between SVG and Austin Hill, which also had issues last week in Chicagoland, the two of them
hmm
have not really put this aside. Carson Hocevar, going back to him, told the media that it was an interesting meeting, and the two of them between Hocevar and Zane Smith, I just don't think that this thing is all wrapped up. Then this week isn't really going to be a week that Hocevar and Smith, SVG, Austin Hill. It's not going to be a week that I don't think you'll see some payback. Now we go to the short track of North Wilkesboro next
That's your
week.
payback cap.
Yes, that's where we might see a little bit of payback or see this rivalry intense a little bit more.
Well, the thing about Carson Hocevar, I like him. I really enjoyed his stand-up burnout, and I love his Kyle Petty wannabe cowboy hat look. I like what he's doing. I mean, are we watching a future superstar or a driver who's just making too many enemies too early with Carson Hocevar?
Well, he's very much outgoing, and I think that you see that he has no intentions of letting up or letting go or giving people, giving people the opportunity to move out of his way. He is going to come through over you, under you, or around you, whatever it takes. And in that way, he's just become a lot like the old Dale Sr.
Hmm
And fans loved it back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s of his kind of style of racing. And Hocevar in a lot of ways mimics that to some degree on the racetrack. There is just no give from him. He is 110%, 100% of the time. So it's just something that I think we are seeing somebody that has embodied the spirit of Dale Sr. and the driving
You're
style in
right.
a lot of ways.
Yep.
His mentality after the race is, not really to apologize in a lot of ways. And, Dale Sr. was the same way. I think you can be a hard driver and you can be just somebody that is not going to apologize for your hard driving, and that is something that we've lacked in the sport for a long time. And I don't think fans as a whole have really grappled with that to some degree. We've just seen a lot of just, oh, I'm sorry, I'll let you go pass by me, a lot of give. And, it's just been a long time since we've seen somebody like that. So, yes, he's going to ruffle some feathers, not only between, the competitors on the track, but he's going to have a very spirited debate between the fan base as to, love him or like him.
Absolutely. And every generation has that guy. You certainly mentioned Dale Earnhardt, of course, Joey Logano. Who can forget Kyle Busch, and now absolutely who can forget Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain. I mean, were they any different? I mean, I don't know. I mean, but should the veterans take some time to mentor him or just race him harder and see what he's made of?
No, I mean, he's got some veterans around him over there with Michael McDowell and Inspire
Mm.
Motorsports over there. He's had this opportunity to work with Ross Chastain for a long time in the Truck Series, and he's had people around him. And I just think yes, I mean, there's some mentoring that can happen, both on and off the racetrack. But I think that the veterans out there need to race him harder, see what he's made of,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think necessarily he's going to go out there. And yeah, I think there was a mistake last week at Chicagoland Speedway with between him and Zane Smith, and it was just just a clear cut racing incident, and NASCAR deemed it kind of the same way. But I think at the same time, I think that the veterans of this sport, the people that have been around the longest, can mentor him off the racetrack. And I think you look back. This kind of copies in a lot of ways. Corey Day early on. Corey Day,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
and the O'Reilly series was just kind of having these instances on and off the racetrack, and he was wrecking cars, he was wrecking other people, and he just really. And it wasn't until Jeff Gordon and Rick Hendrick and the veterans over there at Hendrick Motorsports kind of stepped up and say, hey, yeah, you can race hard, but you don't need to come home with a wrecked car and wreck other people's car every single weekend. That's changed his driving style, and he's won races since then.
Yeah.
So I
Develop.
think I think Hocevar in some respects that can happen to him too. I think he can still race hard. He's just I think it'll just be up to sometimes the competitors will police themselves in some way, and that's where NASCAR, I would highly hope that NASCAR just kind of steps out of the way unless it's once again something very intentional to a degree that they have no point and have no choice but to step in for. But let the competitors police themselves. Carson Hocevar has won this year. He has the opportunity to get into this 10 race championship format later on this year. These are competitors that he's going to have to compete against next year. And if it makes it hard for him to move on in that 10 race kind of chase deal that we've got going on and denies him a championship opportunity because they get in his way, because he's done something to them, then that's the only way he's going to kind of learn out of this. And that's why I say you give the competitors a little bit more leeway to police themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to ask, does Hocevar, eventually calm down, or does he double down? We don't know. One thing we do know is that drivers have a very long memory and they remember everything. So, hopefully he calms down. I think a driver can be too aggressive in today's NASCAR. And, I think Hocevar is good for the fan base and it's good for NASCAR. So we'll monitor this and we'll see what happens. But Right at the moment, it just looks like it's just one of these driver spats that we see on from time to time. I know you didn't get a chance to watch all the race last night. Neither did I, but I do know one thing: it was just riddled with red flags after red flag after red flag. And as we got closer to the end of the race, we're like, "Holy cow! Here we go again." Did they learn anything? What do you think has caused so many red flags? I get aggressive driving in a restart. That's part of it, but it just seems like there was a lot more excessive red flags in the O'Reilly's race than what we typically see.
Well, I think it's a product of the way that they've changed this track over the last couple of years, and the product of racing there that's similar, so similar to Talladega and Daytona, or just on a shorter track. I mean, it's like putting a rocket. It's like putting a rocket ship in a little contained area and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, you guys go race, have fun." It's just that kind of close quarters. The track isn't as wide as Talladega and Daytona, so they just don't have the area to move around. There's nowhere to go in a lot of places, so you're kind of battling two things at one time there. You stack up fields. We've seen 20 plus car accidents at Atlanta here since they've kind of reconfigured this over the last couple of years. And I think no, I don't think you necessarily see any kind of change today. You just may see some better drivers, or some lucky drivers out there that are able to scrape through some of these incidences and be able to come home with a win. You look at just a couple of years ago when Daniel Suarez won there, him and Blaney, a three car just so close together out there, just competing for that win. We've seen cars out there that are not necessarily that would win at Talladega or Daytona still have the opportunity to win to some degree and place good finishes there. So you've got these differential cars and drivers and just kind of style of the track that just all mashed itself together. And I think to one way the fans see this as exciting, and then you have the other side, just like Talladega and Daytona, where they say this is ridiculous racing with these red flags and cautions.
All right, well, let's get into the Quaker State 400 preview. That is today at 7 o'clock tonight. Some of the things we can talk about at EchoPark Speedway, by the way, is the old Atlanta Motor Speedway. Like I said, I found myself 2 or 3 times wanting to say that. Of course, very much pack racing. Drafting is going to be a huge factor. Fuel mileage, late cautions, overtime possibility. Well, I will almost 99% guarantee that we're going to have at least one overtime in this race today. We'll see how it comes together. If you're a crew chief, insert team here. If you're a part of the Power Three with Penske and Chip Ganassi and other Joe Gibbs Racing and other top tier drivers, and you are the crew chief, you know what you've got to deal with going in. You probably learned something from last night's O'Reilly Parts race. If you're that crew chief, what are you doing to be ready for the very tight packed in racing, drafting, fuel mileage, cautions? All of that comes into play there at Echo Park Speedway.
I don't think there's much you can do from that point of view. You've got a driver out there that's hanging onto a steering wheel, running so close together out there, and these incidences just erupt so quickly out there, and you can be involved so quick. I think it's just more about what the teams are able to do on pit road when these kind of incidences happen. Or, I think it's really incumbent mostly upon that spotter that is on that grandstand down on top of that roof, trying to kind of give you a picture of where these runs are coming, and hopefully to try and get you out of some of these things. Look, I know that people, and there's drivers and crew chiefs that have kind of worked up these plans at Daytona and Talladega, and Denny Hamlin and his crew chief have been one of these that say, "Hey, I'm just going to go to the back of the pack, and I'm going to ride around for 160 laps or whatever it may be, and then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to try and do something. I don't necessarily, you don't get that opportunity at Atlanta. So, some of those kind of, game plans that you may, want to game, I don't necessarily call it, I guess, you're gaming the field to some degree because you're trying to stay out of these things. You're trying to get these people to wreck up in front of you, which give you the best opportunity to win. But the thing is that, it just doesn't work at places like, Atlanta. It's just, you've got the field will eventually string out to a point, even with these packs and single file kind of freight trains out there, that you can go quickly a lap down out there. So you don't really get these opportunities out there like you would some places. So I think it's really incumbent upon mostly, once again, that spotter on top of the roof to try and give you the best picture of what's going on out there and try and keep you out of these instances.
Absolutely. Well, here's some of the drivers that we've got our eyes on today. Some of the ones that we put together in our DraftKings betting earlier today. Tyler Reddick. What are your thoughts about Tyler Reddick? Obviously, he's been a driver that we've been watching all year long. Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, and William Byron. Those are the drivers that we're watching today.
Well, after Reddick's issues last week, it's dumped him deeper into points, 40 plus behind Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin has been on the hot streak. Reddick, he's been on this cold streak. Reddick is going to start 31st. I mean, Denny Hamlin's not much better than him in 28th, but still the point is that Reddick and that team have got to figure out what is going on over the last couple of weeks. They've wrecked out of races. They've blown. I believe it was an engine last week at Chicagoland. And that put him out of this thing. Denny Hamlin's just been nipping away at that, 4 wins that he had early this season with Tyler Reddick, and it just gone on this kind of winning streak ever since, Charlotte, Nashville, Pocono, places like that. That he's been able to put together these finishes. He's been able to put together 3 wins out there pretty quickly, and been able to just surpass Reddick. And I think that team just has to figure out what the mistakes are over the last couple of weeks, why they started off so hot this year, and then all of a sudden that the cold water faucet just got turned on. It just became just an overflow of cold water on that team over the last couple of weeks. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, those 3 between the Penske teams, Blaney and Logano starting on the front row. Look, Blaney has been the only one really at Penske as a whole that has really been able to do anything this year. Penske has not been that great. Their affiliate driver, with Josh Berry, that once again, not that great. They have just struggled all year long, especially with those Ford cars, trying to figure out what they need to do. Last week, Blaney finishing 3rd out there at Chicagoland. And, again, he just continues to be the leader right now at Penske, but with Logano and Cindric both inside the top 10 starting later on tonight. Josh Berry also has a better opportunity for him. Once again, I think that they may be figuring this out a little bit, and maybe Logano, Cindric, and Berry are starting to close that gap a little bit to Blaney. But you look back at what Blaney was able to do between that 3-wide finish, with Suarez a couple of years ago. I think he's figured this racetrack out to some degree. So I think he will be somebody that we're going to watch.
Well, it's time to get your DraftKings $5 weekly pick for the race today. Do you know who you got, sir?
I really don't. I don't know. It is so unpredictable. It is so it's so unpredictable. Let's just go with Ryan Blaney. Let's say if Ryan Blaney takes this thing later on tonight. Oh, and then by the way, while we're kind of talking about some drivers to really talk about, RCR, Austin Dillon starting 4th. So look at him. He is a drafting track driver. He has a good opportunity, I think, for RCR to kind of break through. And yes, Austin Hill may be starting, 30th, later on tonight, but he's somehow figured out this racetrack. Maybe not necessarily this next gen car, but somehow he's figured out this racetrack. And if anybody's going to come from the back, from just like he did in the Raleigh's race before at Atlanta to win, he would probably be a dark horse to kind of figure this whole thing out and be able to get around some of this stuff and come and break through with a win in that car.
So is Ryan Blaney or Austin Dillon your pick?
No, I'm going with Ryan Blaney. I just think Austin Dillon and Austin Hill, those two are kind of dark horses out there later tonight.
Well, we already had him in the top three, so we'll leave him there. We'll leave him there. If he ends in the top three, he pays a whopping $16, sir. So there you go. Some extra beer money, I guess. All right, Steve, we appreciate you jumping on with us. What are some of the things that we're looking at the EchoPark race tonight? What are some of the things you're watching for? Wrap it up and put a bow on it for us, sir.
You got to stay out of the wrecks. That's just where it is. You have to play the game of not only competing up front, but also staying out of the wrecks. And your spotter's got to be there for you. Throughout this entire race, the spotter is going to be running their mouth 1,000 miles an hour, telling you the things that are going on. And I think you have to listen to him, listen to your instincts, and hope for the best, because sometimes you just get tied up in these things that are of no fault of your own.
Steve Wilson, editor-in-chief of Speedway Digest, our official NASCAR contributor. We're going racing in Atlanta at EchoPark, not Atlanta Motor Speedway. I keep wanting to say that all day long. Where can people find your work and masterpieces, sir?
They can follow us at Speedway Digest on Twitter, Facebook, or X, whatever it's called today. Facebook.com/Speedway Digest and SpeedwayDigest.com.
All right, buddy. We appreciate it. We'll talk with you soon.
Thank you.